It was supposed to be a quiet evening, a typical night where everything felt ordinary. But when first responders arrived at the scene, they were greeted with a nightmare. For bodies lay lifeless in a blood-soaked home, and a baby, the only survivor, was left untouched. Lena and Michael, the parents, their mother Janice, and Michael's brother David were all brutally murdered in a horrifying act. Yet the infant, an innocent soul, far too young to understand the violence unfolding around her, was left unscathed. How could such a gruesome act of violence spare the life of this helpless child? Was it intentional or a mere oversight? As investigators began piecing together the puzzle, it became clear that this was no random crime. It was calculated, it was cold, and now a manhunt was underway for the one person who held the answers to why it happened and why the child was spared. But the killer's identity? That wasn't even the biggest mystery yet. The victims were well known in their Tennessee community. Lena and Michael, both in their early 30s, were active members of their local church. Their mother, Janice, a beloved grandmother, had been an integral part of the family. David, Michael's younger brother, had been staying with the family, a man known for his quiet demeanor but strong bond with his relatives. The questions surrounding their deaths deepened the horror. What could this family have done to deserve such a violent end? How could anyone commit such atrocities and yet leave an infant, the one person who could not defend herself, alive? The shockwaves from the murder were felt far beyond the crime scene. As the investigation began, it became apparent that this was no simple case. It was just the beginning of a far more complex and disturbing story. Within hours, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, TBI, took control of the case. They set up a command center and issued a public plea for information. But it wasn't until the next morning that a key breakthrough came. A tip from a witness who claimed to have seen Tanaka Brown and Giovonte, two men with criminal backgrounds, near the scene just before the murders took place. This tip led to arrests. Both men were charged as accessories after the fact to first-degree murder. But did they know what was going to happen? Or had they been drawn into something far darker than they realized? While Brown and Thomas were brought into custody, the investigation turned its focus to the primary suspect, Robert Drummond. A man with a violent past, Drummond's name quickly became synonymous with the killings. But the question on everyone's mind was, why? What drove him to slaughter an entire family? And why leave the infant alive? As the authorities closed in, Drummond vanished without a trace. The longer he remained on the run, the more elusive he became, as if playing some dangerous game with law enforcement. Robert Drummond was no stranger to law enforcement. His criminal record was filled with violent offenses, but the brutality of this crime was unlike anything in his past. What drove him to commit such an atrocity? Was this a crime of passion, or was it carefully planned? What made his actions even more disturbing was that he spared the infant. Was this a twisted form of mercy, or part of a larger, more calculated plan that hadn't yet been revealed? Investigators uncovered fragments of Drummond's history, including violent outbursts, a string of volatile relationships, and signs of a man teetering on the edge. Yet no clear motive emerged. Why this family? Why now? The more the authorities uncovered, the more unsettling the questions became. Drummond's disappearance only deepened the mystery. Was he hiding in plain sight? Or had he already fled, slipping through the cracks and disappearing into the shadows? The search for Drummond escalated into a full-blown manhunt. Tensions ran high as authorities worked tirelessly to track him down. With each passing day, the questions surrounding his actions grew more intense. Was he lying low, planning his next move, or had he already crossed state lines? To aid in his capture, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and U.S. Marshals offered a $17,500 reward for any information leading to his arrest. Yet, despite the growing urgency, every lead seemed to evaporate just as quickly as it appeared. The longer Drummond remained at large, the more anxious the community became. What was he planning next? Was he preparing to strike again? Was he hiding in plain sight? Or was he on the move, fleeing to a place where the law couldn't reach him? The burning question in the minds of everyone following the case was, why? Why had Drummond chosen this particular family? And why had he left the infant alive? Experts speculated that the killings may have been fueled by a personal vendetta, perhaps an old grudge or a dispute that had escalated beyond reason. But could it really be that simple? Or was there something more insidious at play? As investigators delved deeper into Drummond's past, the puzzle grew more complicated. His history was filled with violence, but there was no clear answer as to why he'd targeted this family. And why spare the baby? With Drummond still on the run, the impact on the community was profound. What had once been a quiet town now lived in fear. The victims were gone, and the families they left behind were forever changed. As for the baby, who had somehow survived this horrific attack, her future was uncertain. Though she was now in the care of others, the trauma of that night would likely stay with her forever. The big question remains: will Austin Robert Drummond be caught? Will he ever face justice for this senseless, violent act? Or will he remain a ghost, slipping through the fingers of law enforcement and forever haunting the memories of those whose lives he shattered? The hunt for Drummond continues, and until he's found, the unanswered questions and the fear will linger. Subscribe to Daily Detail_True Crime. Like and share if you want to stay updated on the latest developments. Remember to stay safe. Any suspicious act or movement, quickly report to the local authority.